My name is Alyssa Monroe. I never expected a legal envelope to show up on a Wednesday. It was raining, gray, heavy skies, the kind my dad used to say felt like the world sighing. I had just finished folding the last load of laundry when I heard the mail slot clink. I wiped my hands, walked over, and picked up the thick, official-looking letter. My heart thudded. Notice of property ownership transfer. At first, I thought it was a mistake, some bureaucratic error. I had lived in this house for my entire life. I cared for my dad here, sat with him through his chemo, read to him on bad nights when he couldn't sleep. I gave up college, my social life, my 20s. Dad had always told me, "This house is yours, Alyssa. It's where you belong." But when I opened the envelope, my hands began to shake. It wasn't a mistake. 2 months before he died, Dad had transferred full ownership of our family home to my sister, Vanessa. Vanessa, the one who visited twice a year, spent more on handbags than groceries, and treated our father like an obligation. I dropped into the nearest chair and just stared. Why? Why would he do this? No phone call. No explanation. Just cold legal ink. I called Vanessa, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't even pretend to be surprised. "Oh, that?" "Yeah," she said casually. "Dad wanted someone responsible handling the estate. It's not personal, Alyssa. You can stay for now. Just help out with bills, okay?" Stay? In my own home? As a tenant? I hung up without saying another word. The walls around me felt different now. Colder. Like they knew I didn't belong anymore. But something in me shifted that night. A stillness. A fire. Because deep down, I knew this didn't feel like my dad. Something wasn't right, and I was going to find out what. The next morning, Vanessa showed up with luggage in one hand and attitude in the other. She walked in like she owned the place. Because legally, now, she did. Her heels clicked across the hardwood floor as she surveyed the living room like it was some new luxury condo she'd just bought. And me? I stood frozen, a dish towel still in my hand, trying to make sense of what was happening. "Don't worry," she said with a sugary smile. "I'm not kicking you out. I mean, not yet. But things are going to have to change around here." She started listing them off. Rent payments, chore splits, a curfew. Yes, a curfew. Like I was some teenage roommate she picked up off Craigslist. Wanted to scream, cry, throw something. But instead, I just nodded. Because I knew if I lost my temper now, I'd lose everything. And I still didn't believe this was how my dad really wanted things. I went to my room and shut the door, clutching the last picture I had of us together. Dad and me on the front porch, laughing over burned marshmallows. I could still hear his voice in my head. "You're my rock, Alyssa. This home will always be yours." So why had he changed his mind? I pulled out the old family documents. Deeds, medical records, post-it notes Dad scribbled on when he could barely hold a pen. I searched through everything, for hours, desperate for a clue, a message, anything that told me this betrayal wasn't what it seemed. And that's when I remembered the drawer. Dad's old study. The one he kept locked after Mom died. The one he told me to leave alone during his final days because it had too many memories. But maybe it wasn't memories he was hiding. Maybe it was the truth. The study smelled like cedar and dust. Dad hadn't used it much in his last year. He'd mostly stayed in the living room or his bedroom, too weak to move far. But this room, it was his sanctuary, his escape, and the one place he never let anyone touch after Mom passed. I stood in front of the old oak desk. The drawer on the right side had a brass lock, scratched, faded. Dad had once told me it was just old receipts and boring paperwork. But now every bone in my body told me that was a lie. I knelt down and tried the handle. Locked, just like I remembered. I searched through his desk drawers, hoping to find a key, and there it was, taped beneath the bottom drawer, dusty and hidden. My hands trembled as I slid it into the lock and turned. Click. The drawer creaked open, and there it was. A manila folder. Thick, heavy, labeled with one word in his handwriting. Alyssa inside was a sealed envelope and a flash drive. I sat down, barely breathing, and opened the envelope first. A letter. From my dad. If you're reading this, I didn't fix things in time. I let Vanessa pressure me when I was tired and confused. She said it was just for taxes, that we could always reverse it later. I wanted peace. But I failed you. I'm so sorry, Alyssa. I couldn't hold back the tears. He didn't mean to leave me behind. He had been manipulated, but there was more. The letter ended with a line that shook me. The house is hers, yes, but the legacy is yours. Look at the file on the flash drive, and you'll understand. I plugged it into Dad's old laptop and opened the only file inside. It was a scanned deed to a lakefront cottage I'd never heard of, signed and notarized. And the owner, Alyssa Monroe. My name. I didn't know what this property was yet. But something told me it was more than land. It was power. It was proof that Dad never stopped loving me, and I was going to use it. I stared at the screen, heart pounding like a drum. Lake Bluewood Cottage, parcel Y774B, owned by Alyssa Monroe. Had never heard of Lake Bluewood, not once. Dad never mentioned it. Not to me, not to anyone. But according to this scanned deed, he bought the place 3 years ago. Quietly, with a different mailing address and everything registered in my name. I felt dizzy. Why would he hide this? Why not tell me? Then I remembered something vague. A conversation over dinner, years ago. He had said, "One day, I'll show you a place where the sky kisses the water, where no one can find you unless you want them to." At the time, I thought it was just poetic nonsense. A dream. Now I realized it was real. I drove to the county records office the next morning. My heart raced the entire time I waited in line. The clerk was kind, older, with soft eyes. She looked up the parcel number and smiled. "Oh yes, that's a lovely little place. Right on the edge of Lake Bluewood, fully paid off. Last update, 2 months before Mr. Monroe passed away. Still in the name of Alyssa Monroe." She handed me a copy of the full deed. It was real. No strings, no loopholes, no Vanessa, just mine. I stood outside in the parking lot with the papers pressed to my chest. I wasn't just somebody's sister anymore. I wasn't a forgotten daughter living in borrowed space. I was an owner, a homeowner, and now I had a choice. I could keep living under Vanessa's rules, or I could reclaim something my father secretly built just for me. By nightfall, I had my duffel bag packed and my keys in hand. Vanessa didn't even notice I was gone. She was too busy redecorating the living room and inviting her influencer, friends over for champagne. But one day soon, she'd notice. Because the quiet sister she used to ignore, she wasn't playing quiet anymore. The drive to Lake Bluewood took almost 4 hours. My GPS signal dropped halfway there, and I had to rely on the printed county map the records clerk gave me. The roads narrowed into winding paths, trees hugged both sides of the car, and for a moment I wondered if this was all a wild mistake. Some final trick of grief. But then, I saw it. A small wooden sign carved with fading white paint. Bluewood Cottage, private. My breath caught. I pulled in. The cottage sat just beyond a line of tall pines, nestled like it had been waiting. For me all this time. It was charming. White shutters, mossy roof tiles, a swing on the porch still swaying in the breeze. Not abandoned, not broken, just untouched. like it had been sealed in time. The key from the deed envelope slid perfectly into the old brass lock. Click. Inside, it smelled like cedar and dust, just like Dad's study, but warmer, homier. There was furniture, simple but cozy. Bookshelves filled. A fireplace with an unburned log still resting inside. I turned on the lights. They worked. The utilities had been prepaid for a year, according to a note taped to the fridge in Dad's handwriting. If she finds this place, she'll need light and warmth, and peace. I sank to the couch and covered my face, overwhelmed. He knew. He knew there would come a day I'd need somewhere to run, somewhere to heal. This wasn't just property. It was protection, a backup plan, a love letter in the shape of a home, and I was done hiding. The next morning, I drove into the tiny lakeside town and introduced myself at the general store, bought groceries, talked to neighbors, told them I was Alyssa Monroe, Joseph's daughter. They remembered him. He was quiet but kind, the store clerk said. Said this cottage was for his girl. You must be her. Yes, I am her. And I was finally stepping into the life I was always meant to live. But back at the house Vanessa stole, she had just received an envelope of her own, and she wasn't going to like what was inside. Vanessa always loved surprises. When they were for her. But the envelope that arrived by certified mail 2 days after I left, that wasn't the kind of surprise she liked. It was thick, official-looking, and bore the letterhead of my father's estate lawyer. I wasn't there to see her reaction, but my phone blew up just 2 hours later. First, a missed call, then 5 more, then a string of texts. What the hell is this? Are you trying to pull something behind my back? I swear, if you think you can play games with me... I didn't respond, because for once I wasn't playing her game. The letter she received wasn't a threat. It was a notice, a formal declaration of a pending review of my father's estate, based on newly discovered assets, records, and potential evidence of undue influence on the original property transfer. That's legal language for, we're reopening the case, and you might be in trouble. See, what Vanessa didn't know was that the letter Dad left me, the one from the drawer, it was enough to raise serious legal questions about the transfer of the family home. Questions the court would have to look at, especially since Dad was undergoing medical treatment at the time, and Vanessa was the only one handling his documents. If she manipulated him into signing that house over, she was in for a world of legal hurt, and this time, I had the lawyer on my side. The same one who handled Dad's private will for the lake house. While Vanessa threw her tantrum in the house, she thought she'd won. I sat on the porch at Lake Bluewood, sipping hot coffee and watching the sun rise over the water. Peace wasn't a luxury anymore. It was mine. She could scream, she could threaten, she could beg. But the truth was coming. And for once in her life, Vanessa would have to listen. Because I wasn't the quiet little sister anymore. I was the one holding the real story. And soon, the whole world would know it. The text came from Aunt Dolores. Sweetheart, we need to talk. Your cousin says Vanessa's trying to hold a family meeting about the house. But no one's buying it. Will you come? I hadn't spoken to most of my extended family since the funeral. Vanessa made sure of that, spinning stories, painting herself as the daughter who stepped up while I ran off. But now the tide was turning. They knew something wasn't right. I drove down 2 days later, back to the house I hadn't seen since I walked out. The one that used to smell like cinnamon and old books, now drenched in air freshener and fake smiles. Vanessa was in the living room, perched on the edge of Dad's recliner like it belonged to her. I wasn't expecting you, she said, voice tight. I know, I replied, but the meeting's about me, isn't it? She didn't respond. Our aunts and uncles, 2 cousins, even Grandpa's best friend Mr. Reed had shown up. They sat in a loose circle, their expressions careful but curious. The air buzzed with unspoken questions. Vanessa started talking first, about how complex Dad's estate was, how she'd taken charge in his final months, how hard it was being the only one who handled the paperwork. "I didn't want the house for myself," she said sweetly. "Dad wanted it in the family. I just did what needed to be done." I let her talk. I let her spin. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out 2 copies of the lake house deed and a printout of my father's letter. I read it aloud, every word. The room went silent. When I finished, Aunt Dolores whispered, "He left you a whole property?" I nodded. "In my name, since before he passed." "And the letter?" someone else asked. "His handwriting, his confession. And now the courts are reviewing everything, including the transfer of this house." Vanessa's face drained of color. "This isn't fair," she hissed. "You're twisting everything." "No, Vanessa," I said quietly. "You did that. I'm just setting it straight." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. But when I stood up, half the room stood with me. The silence was louder than any scream she could have made. 2 days after the family meeting, the group chat with the cousins lit up like wildfire. Screenshots, messages, voice notes. Apparently, after I left, Vanessa lost it, threw a wine glass at the wall, accused Aunt Dolores of poisoning everyone against her, told Uncle Roy to shut up and stay out of it when he asked why Dad's real will never surfaced. It was the first time in years anyone had seen her without her perfect, polished smile, and once her mask cracked, it shattered. Cousin Layla sent me a voicemail Vanessa accidentally left on her phone. It was meant for her best friend, but Layla caught the whole thing. I swear to God, if that girl thinks she can take everything after disappearing for years. She didn't do anything. She didn't take care of Dad, I did. I deserved that. House. I earned it. There it was, the truth she'd hidden behind fake sympathy and forced tears. She thought my father owed her something. She thought love could be bought with grocery runs and carefully curated Instagram posts of family dinners, where I wasn't invited. But what she never understood, Dad knew. He saw through it all, and that's why he gave me the lake house. That's why he wrote that letter, and that's why the court was finally listening. My lawyer called later that day, his voice calm but charged with something electric. "Petition to review the property transfer has been accepted," he said. "And your sister's behavior at that family gathering? Let's just say it strengthened your case." Vanessa had no idea the walls were closing in. She thought she was untouchable, but the court date was set, and when the truth finally hit her, it wouldn't be in whispers or rumors. It would be in the form of a gavel, a courtroom, and a ruling that echoed louder than any of her tantrums ever could. Back at Lake Bluewood, I lit a fire in the hearth for the first time. Warmth filled the room slowly, wrapping around me like a hug. Dad built this life for me, quietly, carefully, with love in every brick. And now, I was almost ready to claim the rest. The courtroom was colder than I expected, not in temperature, but in energy. Vanessa sat across from me in a sleek black suit, lips pressed together in a flat line. She didn't look at me. She kept her eyes on the judge's bench like she could will this all to go away with enough silence. But I wasn't 16 anymore, and I wasn't scared of her. My lawyer stood first, presenting Dad's handwritten letter, the one Vanessa never thought anyone would find. Then the notarized deed to the Bluewood property, then the timeline, the diagnosis, the medication Dad had been on, the suspicious timing of the house transfer to Vanessa. Every detail painted a clear picture, and the judge listened carefully. Vanessa's attorney tried to argue that she'd simply been helping manage her father's wishes, but when pressed for documents, emails, voicemails, anything, Her side came up empty. No witness, no evidence, just her word. And by now, that didn't carry much weight. Then came the bombshell. My lawyer presented a medical expert who testified that the medications Dad was on during the final month could have impaired his judgment. That it was highly likely he didn't understand the full implications of the property transfer when he signed it over. And just like that, the balance shifted. The judge took a moment before delivering the decision. Based on the evidence presented, it is clear that the transfer of the Monroe family home was executed under questionable conditions. The court finds sufficient reason to reverse the deed and return the property to the estate. All further actions will be conducted under probate review, with Alyssa Monroe as the primary beneficiary of Joseph Monroe's revised will and assets. Vanessa finally looked at me. Her eyes were red, not from tears, but from fury. She opened her mouth, but the judge raised his hand. This matter is closed. I didn't smirk. I didn't cry. I just stood up, nodded at the court clerk, and walked out, feeling like for the first time in years, I was walking forward. Justice wasn't loud. It was quiet, but it echoed. The drive back to Bluewood felt different this time. Lighter. Like a weight I'd been carrying for years had finally lifted. The courtroom battle was over. But more than that, something inside me had shifted. I wasn't the scared little girl who hid in shadows at family gatherings. I was Alyssa Monroe, rightful heir to her father's legacy. I pulled up the long gravel driveway and saw the cottage bathed in golden afternoon light. The windows reflected the sky like mirrors, and the porch swing gently rocked in the breeze. I stepped inside, and the silence welcomed me like an old friend. I ran my hand along the worn wooden banister Dad had always loved. The kitchen still smelled faintly of cinnamon and pine. Every corner held a memory, a piece of my father's love carefully preserved. This was my sanctuary now. My phone buzzed. A message from Aunt Dolores. "We're so proud of you. Dad knew exactly what he was doing. You deserve this." I smiled, feeling the warmth of family in a way I never thought possible. Later that evening, I stood on the porch watching the sun dip below the treetops. The lake shimmered quietly in the distance, peaceful and still. For the first time since Dad passed, I felt truly at home. No more fighting shadows. No more being invisible. No more pretending. Just me, and the life he made sure I'd have. Because sometimes the hardest battles lead us back to where we belong, and this time, I wasn't just coming home, I was staying.